I didn't face insubordination. I probably faced quiet disdain,
Okay.
and because the young men, the average men, I mean, literally 2 months in of branch school, and then 8 months of training to be a pilot, 4 months in basic helicopter pilot training, and then 4 more months in advanced. And so now I'm 10 months into my military obligation, and I got a month, I think roughly a month for leave, and then off to Vietnam.
Mhm.
The average soldier in Vietnam was somewhere between 18 and 19 years old. And a lot of guys only knew what they heard at their mom and dad's dinner table. And so they didn't necessarily have much experiences. They had many experiences with other cultures and diversity.
Mhm.
So, so that I was a culture shock to them. I was an anomaly to them.
Welcome to Old Guy Talks to Me, a podcast dedicated to helping guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. Ladies, if you want to know what your guy is thinking, this podcast is for women too. Each week, a special guest helps you create that life you've imagined. We talk anti-aging medicine, personal growth, relationships and hot sex. Yeah, you hear me, getting laid more frequently, other guy vices, and topics that many don't want to talk about but need to. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you have to be old. Don't want to miss anything? Be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to go to www.thestandard.academy/magazine and grab a free copy of our new digital magazine, The Standard Academy, where we talk about erogenous zones, growing hair back, and other things that will help you create that kick-ass life. Now get ready to listen up and share with friends.
Okay, so go ahead. And do you pronounce it Hughbrook?
It's Hughbrook, but I
Hughbrook.
don't usually use my full name.
All right.
When it was publishing, I decided to just get fancy because I'm a junior, and I thought it would honor my father more,
Okay.
and my son. I got a son who's the third, but Hughbrook, like
Okay.
Hugh Benson, Hugh O'Brien, and Brooke
Hughbrook.
Benson.
Hughbrook.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hughbrook.
All
Yes.
right. Okay. We'll go ahead. We'll go ahead and get started. This is Orr's official Old Guy at OldGuyTalksToMe.com, a podcast dedicated to helping older guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. That's right, those that they love. And sometimes that means, well, reviewing a little bit of history, a little things in our past. And we're going to be talking about the Vietnam War. And our guest today is retired officer, and I forgot what your rank was, but Arnold Sampson Jr., and he's the author of a book called Dust Off, More Than Met the Eye, Recollections of a Vietnam Medevac Pilot. And shortly after completing the U.S. Army Rotary Wing Aviators course, author Arnold Sampson was assigned to the 68th Medical Detachment helicopter ambulance in the Republic of Vietnam, where he spent much time on his tour in various parts of Vietnam. With assignments as a unit supply officer, acting detachment commander, executive officer, and operations officer, he became intimately involved in the day-to-day operations of a medevac unit. 7 months into his tour, he became an aircraft commander with the call signal Dustin 85. To him, that felt like a 7-year sojourn. Okay, he was awarded several commendations: Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 Purple Heart with Oakley clusters, Vietnamese Gallantry Cross with Silver Star for Valor, Bronze Star, 5 awards of the Air Medal with V device for heroism, Broken Wing Award. And after returning to the United States, he earned an FAA commercial helicopters pilot's license while stationed at Fort Ord, California. And he wrote a book to recount the most vivid memories of his varied experiences in the unit in the hopes that telling his story might enable him to sleep better at night. He has post-Vietnam insomnia, and tranquil sleep often still eludes him. With his book, he's paying homage to friends who died in country or who succumbed to the long tendrils of war once they got home. He values them, misses them, and dedicates this book to their memories and their families. So thank you. Thanks for coming on our program. And thank you for your service.
Thank you for saying that. Very kind of you. I'm delighted to be here. I'm very flattered and honored to be a guest on your show.
So let me kind of take you back here in time, and but that was my math's not very good. When you were in Vietnam, I believe in the late 60s.
Yeah, from 1969 to 1970.
Okay, and so that would have been 52 years ago.
You're amazing. You're an amazing.
Oh no. I had to do some fancy math in my head right there as I was speaking. How did you end up in the military?
I went to college at what was at the time Morgan State College. It's a land grant college, I believe, and I think it's a land grant college in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm a Baltimorean, and the school required able-bodied male students to participate in ROTC, and I did that for the first 2 years. It was basic ROTC, and then they said that the students who they thought were promising, they offered them a chance to participate in the advanced corps, and I applied. I mean, that was probably shell game. It was wonderful on their part to say that, but I certainly applied, and they took me in. It could be that anybody could have gotten in. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but I got in, and so I did 4 years of ROTC, and upon graduation, I was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Medical Service Corps of the United States Army, and eventually I reported for active duty in March of 1968, and I think that the Army's policy pretty much was that newly reporting lieutenants officers were sent to their branch school. In other words, whatever branch you were in, with 19 branches, you were sent to that headquarters to learn about the branch and mm-hmm. to get your first assignment worked out. And while there, they showed my class of lieutenants and one captain a film about dust off, which is the medical evacuation helicopter mission that branch oversaw. Mm-hmm. And we're the ones with the Red Cross on the nose and on the door, and it looked so heroic, and it tapped into something that was laying dormant inside of me. I'd seen a movie years earlier that sort of touched me about aviation, and mm-hmm. David Niven and another pretty famous actor whose name escapes me right now were in this World War II movie, mm-hmm. and I had forgotten about it, but I was touched by it. Sure. And so when I saw that movie, I thought, wow, what heroics. And that looked so good. And they said, anyone want to apply for flight training? I think that 12 to 13 hands went up. I didn't look around because I was only thinking about my little hand. And when it was all said and done and they finished doing the medical screening, 6 of us were qualified to go to flight school. And we did, of the Medical Service Corps officers in my class. And so, go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah, no. What were your first impressions of being in the military?
It was interesting because I had been playing military as a cadet for 4 years, mm-hmm. but to actually report to active duty, there was real life, and I was somewhat in awe of all I saw. It was an interesting time for the country. While I was at branch school, Martin Luther King was assassinated, and that was, challenging for everybody.
Sure.
And so, but it was interesting. I think that part of the 2-month branch school orientation was to kind of give these young officers a sense of what enlisted men mm-hmm. would be going through, so that we'd know when we ordered someone to do something, what we would be sending them to do. So we did some KP, and we did, PT, physical training. Sure. It was very interesting.
Yeah. So, so you go into the military, and I don't know my history well enough, but I know enough, having watched some movies and things like that to a certain extent the military was segregated for quite a time. So my suspicion is you were kind of getting there at one of the front end when it was not as segregated.
That's true. I mean, it was not as segregated. It was the way I think it happened. President Truman wrote an executive order and said the military would desegregate, but they did so in a very de facto way. But then President Eisenhower was elected. He was had been a general, and he knew what the realities were, and he did an executive order, I think, and said, no, effective immediately, the barracks will be integrated, the units will be integrated. No more this, having two different parts of the military. That's what I think happened. That's what history tells me.
Okay, and so that was under Eisenhower.
Eisenhower made it happen. Truman opened the door, but Eisenhower made it real. And so, so when I got there, there were not too many Negro officers, and I was, and we weren't Black, we weren't African American at the time, we were Negro. And then, that we were assigned the same duties as everybody else. I'm not so sure aviation was as delighted to see officers of different cultures, but they wanted people for Vietnam and for the war effort. So there we were. Wasn't a lot of us. In fact, there was a fellow who I helped assisted with his book. I mean, he was probably a great writer, but I did contribute very enthusiastically. He wrote a book that was called 600 MOL. His name was Joseph Pons, Dr. Joseph Pons. And that book was about the 600, just about 600 even African-American chopper pilots who participated in the 9 to 10 year war in Vietnam.
Okay.
Out of about 32,000 pilots.
Okay, so that was a real low. That was a real. That works out to about 3 to 4%. So that's a real low percentage.
There you go, being a mathematician again.
I know. I'm not. I normally don't do that. I don't know what's got into me today. But so when you were in the military,
yes,
did you find that sometimes people who were maybe lower rank would be insubordinate because of your race?
I didn't face insubordination. I probably faced quiet disdain, and because the young men, the average men, I mean, literally 2 months of branch school, and then 8 months of training to be a pilot, 4 months in basic helicopter pilot training, and then 4 more months in advanced. And so now I'm 10 months into my military obligation, and I got a month, I think roughly a month for leave, and then off to Vietnam. The average soldier in Vietnam was somewhere between 18 and 19 years old. And a lot of guys only knew what they heard at their mom and dad's dinner table. And so they didn't necessarily have much experiences. They had many experiences with other cultures and diversity. So that I was a culture shock to them. I was an anomaly to them.
So you find out you're going to Vietnam. I suspect that did not come as a surprise to you. You kind of knew.
I wasn't. Well, let me share this. I'm going to call you Doc. May I call you Doc?
You can call me. You can call me whatever you want.
I don't want to
call you. Doctors. My doctoring is in the past tense.
Okay. If you succeed in doing that, hajazag, but most people can't put it completely behind them. But out of the 6 medical service corps officers in my class of about 23 to 24 newly reporting officers, out of the 6 of us who went to flight school, 4 went to Korea for a 13-month tour. 2 of us went to Vietnam, and I was one of the 2.
So
and only one came home.
Do you need accountability? Are you looking to change the course of your life but have failed to keep on track? Too often we take in information and fail to act. Do you need an accountability program to stay the course? Then go to www.thestandard.academy and find out about my accountability program that goes with my course that helps you find out what you want, why you want it, and how to get it. The accountability program keeps you on track to get results.
So you get to Vietnam.
Yes.
And I'm sure you had some ideas about what it was going to be like. And how are your ideas about what it was going to be like in relationship to the reality of being there?
I thought there would be some degree of normalcy there. I did not anticipate that Vietnam would be the furnace that it turned out to be for most of the tour. It's a very hot place for me, very hot, except for the monsoon season, which is like a very wet. Well, I won't say winter, but it's a different climate condition than the normal weather. It was very dangerous, and I mean, it wasn't unique to me. I mean, I don't know that any of us were truly prepared in our first tour for what we encountered, what we saw. We were all being introduced to a brand new culture, brand new perils. This is a war that was in country that was hard to travel in safely on the ground. So as often as possible, troops were moved with aircraft. As more often as possible, driving the roads would subject you to exposure to mines and the troops in the field, who were my heroes, were subjected to anti-personnel devices, booby traps, and
Sure.
that were well made. And so it was very different from what I thought it would be. But I think that applied to all of us. It was very hard to prepare us for that kind of combat experience.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I really have no basis for imagining this, because I think, with the certain, I know that a lot of times we anticipate things are going to be, and they're totally different, and that can be either good or bad. But
right.
In your case, it was the bad.
Well, let me quickly say this about that. As far as I'm concerned, any military, any soldier, any military, any person who was in the military who went to Vietnam was a warrior, and because anyone there could have been killed at any place.
Sure.
Some of the warriors actually ended up being heroes, but everybody was a warrior, and God bless them. So any perils that I faced, I feel like it was not unique to me. I'm not claiming to have been more exposed to perils than anybody else. My hat's off to all the veterans who served there, whatever year they were there. My hat's off to them. We started out as advisors, and then we became combatants. And I was there in the combatant phase.
Tell me about what's it like, because I can't. Again, this is something that's totally foreign to me. You're in a helicopter, relatively safe above the ground. You got a big red plus sign. It's kind of a target. It's like, okay, shoot here.
Right.
Just in case you can't see the helicopter here, this is big red cross right here, so where you can shoot.
Right.
When you were on your missions, what goes through your mind when you're flying into enemy fire?
Here's what happened a lot of times. It was totally, for me, and I don't think it was unique to me, but it was totally kind of irrational. It was irrational. When a unit, a unit would have an injured or wounded person or persons and they would call for a dust off. They would call into our unit. They would by radio, and tell our radio telephone operator, who we referred to as control, where they thought they were, and they have a map, and they'd say, here's where we think we are. They'd give the coordinates, and we have 1 or 2 urgents or whatever they had, and we need a dust off, and oftentimes we need them bad. And so we took urgents really seriously, and we would try to fly out at altitude. We try to fly out about 2,000 feet if we could, to where we thought they were on the ground, using the same maps that they use. We would trying to look at the topographical maps, trying to see the coordinates on the map, and looking at topographical things like with a valley or a hillside or a rice paddy or something. And then when we got there, we would we approached. We would ask them to pop smoke, and they would pop a smoke grenade, and we would say, "Roger that. I see Romeo smoke." With Romeo would be red, or Yankee smoke for yellow, whatever it was. And more often than not, that's exactly where they were. Every once in a while, I'd say, "Roger, see Romeo smoke," and they'd say, "No, that's not us."
Okay.
So, don't land there.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering about that. Yeah. So the enemy's got this smokes too.
Yes. But the point you asked me, I want to speak to it and say, oftentimes the unit had been in contact some time ago, or the person who was clinging to life or injured may have stepped on encountered a booby trap. So it wasn't from fire. Sometimes it was from fire, and sometimes the firing was still going on. If it was still going on, they would say, "Please come with gunbirds, come with gunships," and we would call for gunships. I think I just did that once or twice. More often than not, if they weren't actively firing, and they were thinking that their enemy was lurking nearby, I frankly, be honest with you, I would be more nervous when I was aircraft commander. I would be more nervous about orbiting around waiting for the gunships to arrive than I would be taking my chances to try to swoop in, get the men, and get out. That's what I would say to them. Get them ready for us. We're coming in, and if we take fire, try to cover us, give us covering fire, and we'll come back with gunbirds. That didn't really make a lot of sense, but somehow it worked out. A lot of things in war didn't make a lot of sense. Somehow it worked out, as in we got in, got the men, and would be get out, usually by flying at a different route than we took to come in, and we would get them to a hospital, and hopefully, I'm hoping that the majority of the men we got to the hospital survive. And I keep saying men because the women that I saw mostly were nurses or Red Cross workers. They weren't women combatants in that era of the military.
At the time that you were in Vietnam, and I'm not sure when, I actually don't know when they came into use. There weren't any surface to air missiles at that point, were there?
They had rocket propelled grenades, RPGs.
Okay, RPG. Okay.
And they were it's one of those that killed, I think, both of the men that I knew personally, pilots that I knew personally who died, were hit. Their aircraft was hit with an RPG. They were shoulder fired, and but they could be deadly. And if you were unfortunate enough to have one hit your aircraft, it was not a good thing, probably going to be fatal to the entire crew. But they didn't have the missiles that you may be thinking of, guided missiles.
Right. Nothing that today. It was probably just like first generation of that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
That you actually aim, the sight of aim versus.
That's exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Did you ever have to turn around because there was too much fire? No.
Never turned around because it was too much fire. And this is not. Let me share with you that this is not false heroics on my part. Never turned around because it was too much fire. never failed to find the men we went out to seek, never let weather or darkness deter us. When the weak were called, we went and succeeded in getting the men. And so, but that was not unique to me or to my unit. I think that was probably true of all the dust-off units. It would be hard pressed to find. We'd be hard pressed to find a more dedicated unit than the dust-off units. The pilots and the crews of those units were determined to do the evacuations that were called for, make the rescues that were called for, and we paid a price because we took hits or we saw things and we encountered perils, but no, we were not forced to not do it because of I was not, at least that was not part of my experience. Yeah. There was a war that went on a long time after I left. I left in 70, and I think the war didn't end until like 72. So I don't know, someone else may have, some other crew pilots may have experienced that. I didn't. We'd go no matter what.
How do you keep the men that are under your command under control in tense situations?
The truth is, the medics were splendidly trained and dedicated. Didn't have to. The men who I was fascinated by were we called them grunts, but they were the infantry troops on the ground. The crews of the aircraft, they were incredibly brave. And so they got on that aircraft and just shut out any fear of danger and would be pulling men in, be exposed to whatever. But by the way, Doc, the important point about the aircraft that we flew, that one of them depicted on the front of my book that's off my right shoulder here, is that we didn't have machine guns. So we weren't armed. And not very many aircraft in Nam did not have weapons. We had our personal weapons, but we have no machine guns, or grenade launchers, or miniguns, or whatever. None of that.
Thank you for joining Dr. Orist and his incredible guest. Like what you heard and learned? Then be sure to do 3 things. 1. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. 2. Share this with someone who may need to hear it. 3. Leave a review and rate this podcast. Opt in at www.thestandard.academy/magazine and get our free digital magazine with savings, articles, and deeper dives into cool controversy. Be the guy who takes action. Without action, you're not going to get the results you want. Thank you again, and make it a great day.